the T's so that we could have 4, and I'd have 4 here and 4 there, and every analyst thought it was very cool until he or she had to work all that data. Today we're down to about 2 screens, a SIM screen, and then usually something called a security user interface. Well, what we want to do is get to 1 screen, and that's the hardest thing. Getting from 8 to 4 was pretty easy. Getting from 4 to 2, now 2 to 1 is becoming very difficult. Getting comprehensive information from external data feeds as well. You can see that we have a lot of the external, we get a lot from our Department of Defense partners, as well as other partners, whether it be JTF, soon to be, or about to be U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. CERT, NSA, FBI, all the other great partners out there, and I'm sure I'm missing all the Department of Defense key agencies that we work with. And then, of course, fuse it together. We have a lot of paper information. It's amazing. It's 2010. And here we are in the Cybersecurity Management Center. We're still walking around with paper. Because what happens is, it's not very exciting to show up and say, excuse me, I have something I'd like you to see. It just doesn't work that way. Because by the time, it doesn't have that impact. As though you come up with a nice, pretty, clear, distinct, basic color picture that shows red all over the place. That usually gets everybody's attention. But clearly, the predictive analysis is key. It's information that, okay, we now know what has occurred, we know, or perhaps we know what's happening now, but what's going to happen in the future, or the near future? Because, you know, the Italian school, Italian race car driver, Ferrari owners, Alfa, Fiats. But one of the things, well, at least they bring me home. My Jaguar usually breaks down and AAA brings me home. But one of the things that you do is you always rip off the rearview mirror, because in the Italian school of driving, what's behind you doesn't matter. That's okay. I used to fly professionally for Mr. Mario, so he taught me that. But one of the keys is early warning capability. It's not what's behind us that's important. That's already occurred. We can't change history, but we can hopefully be better protected for the future. Also, the expanded data visualization, getting multiple queries, bringing in the network information as well as historical and geospatial. That's key. So, what does it provide us? Well, another very busy chart, but I can explain it very basically. We have our universe here. We have storage enclaves as well as enterprise event correlation. What we're trying to do is fuse in near real time what's going on in the trends, what we're finding out there in what's known as the cyber intel world, because we have cyber intel analysts. We have 4 of them located throughout various areas within the FAA, the Department of Transportation. And all they do is convert every day, and they're on shift, so we do it 24/7, 365. They convert the known non-cyber events, the human and the other intel that's coming in, and we convert it into cyber speak, into basically IP addressing. And we're getting away, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, from blacklisting. We're getting towards whitelisting, and that's a whole other lecture, but it's an important thing. So this technology mashup brings all that data that we're finding out, and you can read it. It includes U.S. Search, ATF, utility data feeds, electric, telecom, and others. And it brings it into a world where we convert it with all of the sensors, all of the data, all the internal enclaves, all of the logs, everything that we've got going within the Department of Transportation. We bring it together, store it, and then we're able to bring it back to that correlation of data. And it's an amazing thing. Some people think it's pure magic, but I have actually seen it work, where they're able to actually do those queries, and they can do it so quickly that we're able to actually predict. If we see this kind of action going on throughout the enterprise, we normally can predict based on past, of course there's a baselining time, we can see that they may attack in another area. It's an opportunity for a really proactive way to protect our agency, and we're going to see if it works. The FOAC data analysis, it also utilizes some other tools and current technologies, one of which we've acquired from Northrop Grumman organizations known as NetAL. NetAL is a leading unstructured data analysis product. It provides a pretty accurate and thorough throughput, broad semantic ontology. It's been deployed at some very large agencies, and it expands now to include cybersecurity. But this isn't the only one. There are a couple of world-class organizations, world-class technologies. This happens to be one that we already had a relationship with. So, therefore, we enabled this technology and utilized an innovative process known as saving money. So that was one of the things that we did. But it actually helped us. It's all in my book. I'll see you after all. But one of the things that we noticed was that it really does bring a high accurate output for what we get. And it's a high value type thing. Now, one of the reasons we are interested in that, those of you who may recall the FAA, and by the way, I was introduced and brought back. I have to tell you a quick story, because everyone knows I always tell a quick story. That young lady introduced, and she had a Freudian slip of the FFA, the Future Farmers of America. Well, it's okay. It happened once before, and it's quite charming, in that when I got married late in life. I was 30 years old, I engaged to Stacy. Stacy comes from Western Pennsylvania, a big farming community. So my mother-in-law, to-be, had put in like a little bio that she had this little, I guess the women get together and talk about being married, I guess. I was working, and a control tower. And my wife said the best part of it was when everybody read and said, oh my gosh, Christopher, your fiance works for the Future Farmers of America, FFA. They got all excited. That was very big. He worked for FFA. I mean, he could do something for the community. And my wife sadly had to get up, no, it's the Federal Aviation Administration. He's an air traffic control supervisor. And they went, oh, that's nice too. So FFA, I'd be proud to be a part of that as well. Except that all I can really do is cover it. All right, National Airspace System, the NAS, as we say, is part of the Information System Security Architecture. And we have some enclaves within there. I told you about the 20 air route traffic control centers, 18 to 60,000. We have 275 leading control towers and TRACONs throughout the country. And there's a whole host, almost 600 smaller air traffic control towers serving communities throughout the United States, as well as 2 en route sectors, one in Oakland, California, and Long Island, New York, where I've served, and they do what's called a 4096. They go out there in a 4096 grid and cover most of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, and we have world-class people up in Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. Now, that having been said, that's an awful lot of airspace to protect and a lot of technology to do it. So having a comprehensive ISS-type architecture enables a high level of confidence, a degree of confidence, from whether it be our radar structures, our airport surveillance radars, as well as external boundary protection, our internal boundary protections. We have even test enclaves. The FAA, believe it or not, and I'm a former programmer, did it for a couple of years in Ada, yet I was only like 12 at the time. But one of the ideas was how long has it been there? And that was the future. Anybody remember? Ada was the future. Okay, I drank that Kool-Aid too. But one of the opportunities for the future was to actually protect these environments. And the FAA, by protecting their coding, we still do an awful lot of coding. We used to buy a lot of it, and then a lot of it we actually build ourselves. We have a full technology center in New Jersey. That's the majority of that air route center up there. That's all they do, is the actual coding that makes all of the technology that air traffic controllers such as myself utilize. So it's very key that we have some areas to protect. Now, the availability of these communications and data, you can imagine in air traffic control is pretty important. So how are we going to protect that? Well, Colonel Brown, as the CISO, said, well, where are the vulnerabilities being identified? Well, they're being identified usually when it's operational, at the worst time, right? It's operational, and then people have come in and compromised the systems that are operational. He had a vision to go back before it became operationalized. If we say it for the next 20 years, it probably will become a word, right? One of the opportunities he had was to find some organization, and this team is called Veracode, but there are others. They actually look at the coding that former coders like myself, we make mistakes. I made a whole slew of them as a coder. I wasn't very good. I went back to air traffic. I was a better controller, fortunately. But one of the things is before compilation, for those of you who recognize the term, before it's compiled, when it's just the actual line coding that we used to write, you go through and run it through this application. And it's really wonderful because I wish it had been around 25 years ago when I was doing this coding. It not only brings out the information that you've made the mistakes, but even the better part is like when you take a test and they give you the correct answer. That's really wonderful because they'll actually tell you the areas where how you made a mistake and how you can correct it. Now that's pretty important because that saves us a lot of time rather than trying to guess the correction and then put it back in there. And I learned the hard way. I did a little quick coding through, and I guess no ops are bad. And I used to use them all the time for subroutines. But key is the application security assurance before it's compiled. Now, once you've gotten those cleaned up, one of the types of things that vulnerability, here it is, the Veracode gives you, it gives you a current rating. You get a target score, a rating, they identify your security flaws, they tell you where you are.